Now, integrity in government is the key to a functioning democracy. Nearly 2.5 years ago, at election time, all parties promised that we would have an anti-corruption body at federal level. Now it hasn't happened. 2.5 years later, it hasn't happened. The majority of Australians, for years, have wanted a federal anti-corruption agency. And the number now in favour of it is greater than ever, but it hasn't happened. And the simple message that this letter puts forth is that the government must act now. Distrust about government performance, concern about integrity in government is at a very high level, and it can only be addressed by the public's knowledge that an effective anti-corruption agency is functioning at federal level. That's the message we bring. David?
Could I endorse everything that Tony has just said, but also emphasise that this is not a party political exercise. We are concerned that integrity in politics becomes a central feature of Australian democracy. It can't be said that that is the case now, but it is an absolutely essential element of a democracy that the voters can trust the government and the politicians that they elect. And accordingly, the letter that is published today is one which is joined in by people from across the political spectrum. It is not intended to be directed to any political party. It is intended to have a wide effect which we hope will introduce a new respect by politicians and in the public for the need for integrity, and in particular the need for an integrity commission which will ensure that in future government is seen to be a basis of integrity no matter which party is in power. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Helen.
Thank you, Justice Whelan, Justice Harper. Today we're here because 59 eminent Australians have called on the government to act now and introduce a Federal Integrity Commission. I'm here as a parliamentarian and I call on the Parliament to act on this. On the 8th of September, it will be 1,000 days since the Prime Minister promised the people of Australia a Federal Integrity Commission. Both sides of politics went to the electors with a commitment that a Federal Integrity Commission would be established in this Parliament. 1,000 days later, we don't even have a bill from the government presented to the House. What we have instead was a draft piece of legislation that went to consultation and was roundly criticised for the inadequacy of its measures. What we have is nothing from the federal government that would indicate to the voters of Australia that their election promise is going to be met. That's deeply, deeply worrying for this nation. Our democracy is our most precious thing, and central to a democracy is trust in government. And we've just heard that trust in government continues to drop in Australia. We need to restore it, and a key way to restore it is to ensure that the people of Australia know that when there is a question asked of a parliamentarian or an official in public office, that there's a cop on the beat, that there's an accountability mechanism that can ensure that right is done. That's central. I've been trying to work with this Parliament since I came here 2 years ago. I came with a life before me as a nurse and a midwife, where we had strict rules about codes of conduct, about respect and integrity, decency of our behaviour, accountability. And I came here to work with government to make sure that I could play my part in ensuring that that election promise was kept for the Australian people. And when I ran for Indi, I said that I would work tirelessly to make this happen, and that's what I've been doing. I put a bill to the government, the Australian Federal Integrity Commission Bill 2020. I know that there are members of all persuasions in both the House and the Senate who back me on that bill, because they too, they want to be held accountable in the same way as any member of the public would be held accountable for their work. And so I call on the Parliament now, given that the government truly has failed us on this, it really looks like we'll be coming into the next election without an integrity commission unless we as parliamentarians now demand that we debate a bill for an integrity commission. And that's what I call on my colleagues to do, to join with me to make that happen. And I thank the 59 eminent Australians who are willing to put their name to an open letter out into the public to call the government to come good on this promise.
The open letter, coordinated by the Australia Institute, calls on the Prime Minister to fulfil his election promise and implement a strong, independent and effective National Integrity Commission. The signatories, all 59, include former academics, former judges, former politicians from all sides of politics and members of civil society. Australia Institute research consistently shows that the vast majority of Australians, as high as 88%, support a National Integrity Commission. Not only that, but a majority of Australians support each aspect of a strong and effective Integrity Commission. The open letter shows the depth of support for a National Integrity Commission, and Australian Institute polling shows its breadth. A National Integrity Commission up and running before the next election is required for public confidence and trust in our democracy.
Dr. Haines, what's the status of your private members' bill? How would you characterise the negotiations in Parliament to try and make progress on that? And I'm interested in particular on where you've had any talks with Labor about it and try and shame the government into some way.
So my bill, the Australian Federal Integrity Commission bill, sat on the notice paper for as long as it could. It's just come off the notice paper, so I have the option to me to reintroduce it, and I'm willing to do that. I've been in conversations with all parliamentarians, and I've spoken to Labor about this, of course, as I've spoken to the Prime Minister, the new Attorney General, and many other members of Parliament. The Labor Party are very pro-Integrity Commission. They went to the election with that promise. They promised to introduce one, I think they said, within the first 100 days of coming to Parliament. So they support the Parliament coming together on this bill and voting to make it happen. Best to talk to the Labor Party about that, but I've worked closely with them, as I have in the same way with members of the government, to look at the detail of the bill and to try and work out what it is that would be the most effective bill that we could have. Yeah.
Dr. Haines, we're likely to see Bridget McKenzie return to the public in the coming week, less than 18 months after she resigned over the sports rort scandal. What does that say about, the government's attitudes towards integrity issues?
Well, I think the National Party have made the decisions that they've made yesterday in the party room, and Senator McKenzie backed in, as I understand it, the new leader of the party, Mr Barnaby Joyce. So Mr Joyce has a question, really. Where does he stand on integrity, and where does the National Party stand on integrity? And I speak as a regional and rural MP, an independent MP that really has seen the erosion in trust in the National Party in my electorate. The vote for the National Party has slipped away dramatically in my electorate, and indeed across other areas of regional Australia. So I know, and I'm sure that the National Party members, if they're paying attention and listening to regional Australia, know that fundamental decency and accountability and the structure that we need in the Parliament to make sure that happens, a Federal Integrity Commission, is a key driver for them in their election decisions. So this is an opportunity for the National Party to say to the nation, we're listening and we'll back an Integrity Commission and support debate in the House, support a bill to come forward and establish one.
Question for the Justices, just to clarify, is your letter calling for the government to bring on their existing bill on an integrity commission sooner rather than later, or are you happy with that bill, or are you not?
Well, I think that we're asking them to bring in an effective anti-corruption bill. They can bring forward their bill if they wish, but every response every sensible response to that draft, that exposure draft, has been condemnatory of it. Really, it's been regarded as absolutely ineffective. The expressions used time and time again. It's a toothless tiger. I think that's even glorifying it. It's not a tiger even. It's a sort of a wimpish pussycat with no teeth. But we're calling on them to do something. They're not doing anything about it. That's the point we make.
When Australians would be watching this debate, they would wonder, or they might wonder, what's happening in federal politics right now that needs oversight. We've seen questions about a land deal with the new Western Sydney airport. Obviously, there were the sports works reports early last year. When you look at federal politics at the moment, are there things that you see that require an anti-corruption body? That the existing body is not adequate to deal with?
Because the coronavirus has been so influential in government thinking, quite rightly, it has resulted, amongst other things, in individual ministers having power to dispense with extraordinary amounts of money, sometimes in the billions. I'm not suggesting that anything has been spent incorrectly, and I'm certainly not suggesting any corruption. But when individual ministers have the power to dispense such huge quantities of money, there ought to be a body that is able to make sure that that money is spent in the public interest and not for personal gain or for purely political gain. We don't have any such body at the moment, and I think the current situation with or produced by COVID is an illustration of the need for an oversight body.
And why would the Australian National Audit Office not be enough?
The Australian Audit Office is an extremely important, a vital component in the overall integrity oversight position. But it's underfunded, and the government has refused to accept the agency's request for appropriate funding, and its powers, of course, are limited. We would certainly see the Auditor General as being a very important part of oversight, but we think that only a National Integrity Commission with appropriate powers will have the ability to ensure that issues like the expenditure of very large sums of government money is corruption-free.
And can I add, David, just one thought on that? The Audit Office, I agree, is a tremendously important body, but it's not concerned with uncovering corruption. It's essentially concerned with performance and indicators of appropriate performance. So it's not designed to uncover corruption. And it was very worrying, I think, that its findings in the sports fraud scandal were more or less set at naught by a report from Phil Gations, which we've never seen, confidential report, always worrying if it's confidential, which apparently disagreed with the Audit Office. So I would say, firstly, that that particular affair has never been properly investigated by a body whose concern is to detect and uncover corruption. And as far as the Leppington Triangle case is concerned, it too has been investigated by a contracting body that the government employed, but that body didn't have the powers to really find out what went on in that case. So all of these things, whichever one you mention to us, has effectively not been appropriately investigated.
David, I'd like to add to that too. I think we've got 59 eminent Australians signing a letter today, but we have got millions of everyday Australians on the ground who have to listen to a parliament that has secret investigations, as the Justice has just talked about, on an issue that really meant something to them. It was everyday mums and dads sitting at kitchen tables late at night filling in applications for a sports grant who were cheated of an application outcome. And we never really found out the bottom of that. Yes, the fantastic Auditor General's Office alerted us to the problem. They did their job. And yes, they're coming to the government with a begging bowl to make sure that they're adequately funded to undertake their work. But from there, our Cabinet in Confidence report, that gives anyone on the ground no confidence whatsoever. We've got jobs for mates. We see the AAT with jobs for former MPs and staff members. Everyday Australians are sick to death of this stuff. They want to see proper behaviour. They want to see a government that's held to account, and they want to see a mechanism with teeth that can hold us to account here in this Parliament.